If you know me, you know for a fact I love classic movies. And of course, one of my few favorite channels to watch these subjective classic movies on is, of course, Turner Classic Movies. And of course, some of the times to watch them is occasionally whenever I could find them. But sometime, I guess, around 2014, 2015 has been the year I've watched a lot of TCM. Because, well, I needed to catch up on a lot of classic movies that I really haven't been able to see. But whenever I can, from time to time, and whenever I feel like it, I might catch up on maybe a movie or two on the channel, varying on what I feel like watching on there. And thankfully, around Christmas time, and this seems to be a thing that I guess plays every year on the channel, is that Turner Classic Movies has played Christmas in Connecticut from 1945, released by Warner Brothers Pictures. Now, the thing is with Christmas in Connecticut is that it's such a magnificent little movie. Christmas in Connecticut is just a magnificent movie. It is just, in my opinion, one of my few favorite classic movies that, despite the fact that I have, like, a lot of friends, especially in the online world, they don't talk a lot about this movie. And I, of course, wonder why. I mean, it has Dennis Morgan and Barbara Stanwyck and, of course, and S.G. Secal. A lot of these actors known for the time. But I guess it's not really that much of a talked about movie. So, I guess we can talk a fair bit about it. So essentially, a man from the Navy during World War II had his ship blown up, and unfortunately, in order for his time to pass in the hospital, he winds up reading some articles in the hospital. Those articles turn out to be from a woman who winds up publishing articles from her life on the farm. However, her real lifestyle is that of her real life in her apartment in the big city. And when the naval officer decides, I'm gonna basically set up this little thing with the writer of the actual article to live in the barn, or where she lives, out in the, like, countryside with her for Christmas time, suddenly everything seems to be going, like, completely the opposite of what she does, and she requires the assistance of everybody around her in order to make sure that everything works properly. It's pretty much one of those, like, stories that I've seen done in modern time before, except it's pretty much done here. But Christmas in Connecticut really is an outstanding, wonderful movie. And it's hard to describe the right words for this. Is that the woman is that the person who runs her articles, say, basically wants to get some publicity for having the naval officer in her home, in the countryside home, in order to get more publicity and whatnot. So she goes through these lengths, getting assistants, like an actual chef and the actual little person who runs her articles to stay with them, and actually getting somebody else's baby to stay with them at the actual home. Insane Christmas story, but I don't know, I consider this my guilty pleasure. I mean, a lot of people say that a lot of people have said that the Rudolph movie, a lot of people, if they can say that The Grinch is their guilty pleasure, I'm referring to the Jim Carrey movie, or even the Rudolph movie from 1998, which is animated by Good Times Entertainment, then I can say without a doubt, Christmas in Connecticut from 1945 is my guilty pleasure. Because despite the fact that it's some person who writes the articles trying to live a secondary life, oh my god, that's almost like real life. Sort of like how I do my style. Most everybody on the internet thinks they live their lifestyle. But the way I see things, it's sort of one of those stories or whatever where somebody lives a secondary life or whatever and thinks that their secondary life is much better than theirs, than their actual first life. So it's one of those types of stories, but then the liar revealed cliche comes in, but thankfully not in the middle of the story, and of course everything winds up good in the end. Is it a bad film? No. But I do like to watch it every year, just to see just how beautiful the film is, despite the fact that it's a 1945 black and white film. I mean, the thing did get remade into a TV movie, but it's not as well received as the original that I've talked about. If I recommend it to you, some of you may like it, others probably not so much, depending on your taste of movies. I mean, it is, I think, if I were put it in a genre, a romance comedy, I think. But I mostly would entitle it a comedy, because that's what it is. It's a comedy about literally, because it's a comedy. That's what it is. At least that's what I got out of Christmas in Connecticut. But, I mean, I'd still, like, watch it yearly on TCM, or just get the DVD alone if I could find it there, or just get it on VHS, just because it's a lovely little film. Okay, now that we're done with that, how about we move on to our second film? I'm still keeping with my promise, and we're going to move on to Miracle on 34th Street. And I forgot what the year it was. 1947. Gonna jump 2 years into the future just for this little feature. Delightful. And now we move on to our final piece of our day for the review marathon, at least for classic movies for today. We move on to 1947's Miracle on 34th Street. And this is the original, this is the original, not the, the one written by John Hughes and featuring Mara Wilson, of all people. This is the original, the true, the definitive. Never mind. Pretty much, the history behind it fascinates me. But I mean, not because of the fact of behind-the-scenes production, but because of the way that the movie was not only marketed, but released as well. Because the way I heard it, this movie was released 6 months before December. Yes. That's what I heard. It was released 6 months before December came along. So it was released halfway into 1947. And then, like, people saw it, slowed down a bit, but then as soon as it hit December, it became an instant hit. But then the trailers for it were actually kind of interesting. It showed somebody in the backlot not trying to understand what the whole idea of Miracle on 34th Street was, so he sat into one of the preview screens on the Fox lot, and he just started to enjoy the movie. And that's how the trailer is for Miracle on 34th Street. It's such interesting choices they made for marketing and putting this film in theaters. But pretty much, if you don't know the story as it is, pretty much is a man who sees himself as Santa, and everyone around him keeps constantly thinking that he's not the real Santa Claus, and they try to do as much as they could to try to prove that he's not Santa Claus. But still, in his determined fashion, the Santa Claus here winds up proving to just about everybody that he is Santa Claus. But of course, he winds up getting himself into a court case, as of course, he has to suffice some evidence in order for him to be out there to deliver the presents. It's a fun... Like, it's interesting as it is as a little court film, as also being a little bit of a fun family film. Well, maybe not a family film, but at least something to at least start some movie buffs library. But if there's one thing I do like about this, there are a lot of moments where I do believe that I think it was because of this movie that there was a lot of things in Miracle on 34th Street that changed the way that a lot of stores did a lot of movies. I don't know, it just interests me. But overall, pretty much as I've said previous years I've done this, Miracle on 34th Street is worth the watch whenever it comes on any of the networks. Sometimes I see them on AMC, sometimes I see it on Sundance TV. It usually varies on what listing it might have it on. Though I have heard that it has played on Turner Classic Movies. Might need to look that one up. But pretty much that'll do it for today's Santa Going to Court. Or the theme of this movie of Santa Claus going to court. Hope you'll tune in tomorrow for the next installment of the 28 Days of Christmas Marathon. And I just realized... That was loud. And I hope you'll tune into tomorrow, because hopefully by sometime within some point, I'll get around to reviewing some Christmas alternatives.